See, so I've had a few dreams, but I really haven't had time to write most of them down. But the one I do have was, let's see, today is the 28th, so I had this one back on, I think it was the 16th, 15th or 16th of this month. Right, so sometimes I feel some real life waking life experiences influences the real side sometimes. Sometimes it seems like it with me. But okay, so the way this dream started out, I had woke up in my bed, at least what I thought was my bed. I have a queen size bed and kind of a memory foam mattress on it, and this was like some like double king size mattress that was like pillow top, but it really wasn't a pillow top. It was like sleeping on a bed of leaves, but it was like bed shaped with like a frame mattress, but the mattress was made out of layered leaves. It was really soft and comfortable. I'd found myself just kind of stretching out and just kind of nature noises around me. I had found myself just in a forest. It was more heavily, nothing menacing or anything. It was kind of bright, warm light shining down in rays, cascading down on me. It was really warm and comfortable feeling. And a whole bunch of nature, birds chirping off in the distance, kind of some rustling in the weeds around me. At the time, I didn't really realize I was in the forest at all. I had noticed that it wasn't my bed, but for some reason I was registering it was my room for some reason. It was just kind of laying in, stretching, kind of listening to the nature as if it was a early spring morning and I had my window open. I was just relaxed and just wanted to listen to the nature outside. The warming sun rays beaming down on me was really comforting as well, and it's just one of those comforting mornings. But this went on for a little bit, just kind of tossing and turning a little bit, stretching. And then I started realizing that I wasn't in my actual bedroom. This wasn't a massive surprise. I wasn't shocked or anything. More, I kind of had the sense that this was more my actual room. I guess I could call it a bedroom because it was kind of like a clearing in the woods, but it was still heavily covered above me with canopies of tall trees. But it just felt more homely than my actual home, as if I belonged there in that spot. I wrestled myself out of bed and just kind of flopped down off this kind of bed-shaped pile of very comfortable leaves and some other, there was other things in it. I'm not sure what. There were some flowers and stuff about. I flopped my feet down onto the kind of like soft grassy, there's some chunks of moss here and there, kind of like a velvety carpet. And I felt my feet kind of pad down into it. Just found myself just kind of wiggling and digging my feet into it. Just kind of, it's a very comforting kind of sensation. And I just gave a big stretch. I had no sense of urgency, as in time did not matter, and just take my time at doing this, getting out, just enjoying myself. Felt like I had a very deep slumber asleep, very refreshing, energizing. I go ahead and stand up very carefully and slowly, but I feel a little wobbly. I'm not entirely sure why. But I take a couple steps forward and I feel my feet just kind of like padding and squishing into the kind of the mossy floor. The sun rays still kind of blaring down through, hitting, glaring and glancing across my eyes as I move forward. And I happened to slightly lose my footing, and I caught myself, and I'm thinking, thankfully, there was enough friction or traction in the moss on the ground around the bed that my claw was able to catch. And at that moment, I realized, why did I think claw? I have feet. I don't have claws. I have nails. And I looked down, and this kind of goes along with the same previous dreams I've had before with that weird creature that almost as if it was part of me. Maybe it was a previous life or an existence. But I had these furred, long, elongated, kind of like digigrade feet, and these long, sharp claws kind of protruding out of my toes. And that's what had actually caught me and prevented me from slipping, which is the claws dug into the mossy ground of the forest. I didn't feel really shocked or out of place. I just took a moment to observe my legs. Digigrade's kind of like this weird, where your feet are elongated and your heels are more higher. Kind of think like the rear hind legs on a lot of quadrupedal animals like cats and dogs. But I'm standing on 2 feet and I have 2 hands. So standing upright. I didn't really think much of it, just it was normal. It was natural. At this point, the fact that I was human kind of faded, and there was really no more questioning. So I had, from there, after taking a moment to observe my legs and my feet, or paws, I guess you would call them, I just continued walking forward, and the kind of opening I was in had little kind of like divided little sections. And this is if it was a house kind of laid out with different rooms. The ceiling was the canopies of the trees far above, and the walls separating the rooms were thick, somewhat thin, dense walls of honeysuckle. Um, the house or the area was full of the sweet natural sense of honeysuckle. I've always enjoyed that scent, and every time I smell that in the waking life, it memories of my past childhood self when I was younger would come flooding back. I spent a lot of time outside in the woods. But that was like the walls to the different rooms. There was, I guess, a bathroom, even though there wasn't like stuff in there. There was, I guess, what would be considered like the living room and foyer area. Some other open kind of floor plan were a kitchen, and the kitchen had large kind of like rocks or boulders, I guess, kind of like, I don't know, about like 4 by 4 feet, something like that. And then laid across them were these really hefty slabs of like shell stone or something like that. Like they were purposely laid out countertops and tables. Across the various, there was carved out bowls of stone, various ones that are holding different things that look like ground up salt. One of them looked like various flowers that had been ground together as if it was like a mortar and pestle. Some various of dried meat hanging off to the side, off of some branches. And from there, I just continued on into the kitchen area, and was just kind of picking through the various stone bowls and grabbing some of the dried and/or cured meat. It looked like dried meat, so it was probably cured since it looked like there was ground salt. And I was just kind of mixing some stuff together and layering it on top, almost like the meat was like bread on toast, and herbs and stuff I was adding on top was like like a jam, or kind of like butter you would put on top of your toast, and just kind of layering it up like that, and then just kind of walking around very lazily, like, and just nibbling on it as a early morning breakfast. I passed by this kind of opening that was an actual door, I would say, but it was pieced together with more natural, organic things instead of like processed woods that we have, where doors we would see in our houses. This is more kind of like layered vertical panels of bark and just kind of intertwined twigs and branches and stuff. But it did open. I had reached out and opened the door. And as I'm walking through, the forest is large and open. As far as the eye could see, there wasn't much shrubbery. If anyone's ever been over kind of on the west coast of the U.S., a lot of the old growth woods there's not really honeysuckle like there is over in the east side where I'm at. So you could see for far long distances without really any obstruction, and just tall rows of trees, but you could still see. I just trot on out, finishing the snack in hand, and the door closes behind me, but it wasn't my hand. This tail, kind of long sweeping tail, it wasn't very thick. It was furred, kind of with like tiger stripes, but for some reason I knew I wasn't a tiger. But it was thicker at the base. It was probably about 5 feet long or so, with this big bushy kind of fur end on it, kind of like how a lion's tail would be on the end. It had on its own kind of like caught the edge of the door and pulled it closed as I just walked out, almost as if it was automatic. Didn't even have to think about it. And I just start walking down through the woods. I felt like there was something I had to do, but I wasn't entirely sure what it was. I happened upon this it really wasn't a waterfall. It was a stream that cascaded down a few rocks, maybe 2-3 feet high at most, into a little pool at the bottom of it before the stream went further off. And I had dropped to my knees and on my hands, which they were like hands, but more furred and elongated, and large claws on the end, very similar to my feet, but just more hand-like instead of like football type form. But I had leaned forward and lowered my face down to the pool of water beneath the waterfall, and I was just kind of sniffing around, taking in these very earthy, woody scents. Just the smell of like natural things like the dirt, the leaves, wood. There were some mushrooms off to my left side. Just the senses were dramatically more enhanced, more so than I think if I was human. I don't think I would have registered such intense sensations. And I mean, it was more like a sensation than just like sense. The scent and smell of things. It was almost as if I was perceiving it in a more surreal, in-depth way. I probably how maybe something like an animal would, that has far more complicated noses and than what humans do. But just it was comforting. I just felt at home and relaxed because the smells and senses around me were just felt right. I'd brought my hands down to the water and was kind of cupping up water, and instead of like a human, I would pour it into my mouth from my palm. Instead, I was licking it from my palms. I had this long, thinner tongue that was kind of like a snake tongue almost, but like it was kind of like a cross between a canine's tongue, but on the tip was kind of forked like a snake tongue would be. But it was usable like a dog's tongue, lapping like how a dog would lap water up from its bowl to drink. Not entirely sure what happened from this point, but next thing I know, I find myself further upstream from that point, and my feet are in the stream. It's not too deep. It's about a foot deep where I was. And I was just standing there, just taking in the senses. I could feel the slow rush of water around my, I guess, ankles or elongated feet, and the hefty weight of my fur of what had got wet just kind of swishing in the currents of the water running past me, like an actual weightiness as if my hair was wet. And I was staring off into the distance, and in the distance, I was hearing noises that started to make me feel uneasy. Not really fearful, but more kind of like a sense that I need to stay alert, or maybe I should just turn around. At this point, I'm kind of realizing that my mindset isn't quite human. Mainly I was realizing this after the dream, that my senses were more animalistic, but with human intelligence. So I was processing things around me in a more bestial way, I guess, but with human understanding. And the sounds I was hearing were kind of like metal scraping on metal, cracking noises, machinery, faint sense of the scent of kind of oil and just kind of dirty mechanical systems was kind of wafting my way from that direction. The wind was coming from that direction towards me, so I was able to pick up on these little bits of smells in the air because my extra sensitive nose I had to smell things around me. I'm just still staring off in that direction, and my eyesight kind of zooms inward, almost as if I was able to see much further than normal human eyes could, and kind of like past the edge of the woods into a clearing. And there was kind of a mechanical steampunk-like city that was very dirty. Just kind of like I could see smokestacks. The air was looking not clear and smoggy. I just had the sense at this point that I shouldn't go that way. And I had turned to my right and started walking that direction, keeping the dirty city area to my left at a kind of a steady distance from where I was. I wasn't getting closer nor further away from the edge of the woods. And off in the distance, the direction I'm heading, I start hearing noises, and kind of my human intuition I still seem to have. I had heard voices, and to me they were human voices, something I did not like. I had dropped down onto all fours and started kind of, I guess, creeping forward. and I'm reach a patch of honeysuckle. I start looking through, and there's two men out there, and humans, and I felt that they don't belong here. They shouldn't be here. I don't like it. And just I had this urge where I just needed to react. I had to do something, and my body had tensed up. The claws on my hands began to dig into the soft soil of the floor of the woods I was in. And I felt this kind of electric sensation work its way up through my tailbone, all the way up my spine to the base of my neck, and then reversed outwards along the top of my tail. As if kind of like when a cat or a canine gets kind of spooked or alert, kind of like they have this like part of their fur that kind of stands on end. Usually that's definitely like a visual warning to others, hey, stay back. But at this time, the humans had noticed me and they started yelling. And before the second one could really react, it's kind of a blur. And the next thing I know, I'm flying through the air, landing on the first one that was yelling. And I felt just this burst of energy, excitement almost, and different smells flooding my senses. The one I had jumped towards was no longer screaming, and I guess my eyes are kind of looking upward at the other one that hadn't really said anything yet, and they're just kind of frozen in place. And I'm noticing that my mouth just feels really warm. I'm unsure what it is, and I'm kind of getting this metallic kind of smell and a copper-like flavor developing in my mouth. And next thing I realize, I guess I have this muzzle of some sort, and I have my teeth wrapped around his jugular, and the warmth and the smell is, I think it was blood gushing from his neck. I'm kind of registering what's happening. It was a very adrenaline-fueled experience but my brain, my kind of like human intuition is starting to finally work its way through the haze of what just happened. I just lunged at this man and sank my fangs into his neck. He's not really moving, other than it kind of seemed like he was gasping for breath. I let go, but there's really nothing that can be done. I mean, I practically ripped his throat out, and his friend there is just standing there tense and in horror, not even moving, as if they're just kind of frozen in place and unsure what to do. And for some reason, I had reached down with my right hand and just kind of wrapped my claws around his neck that I had just grabbed, or that I just bit into, and looked up at his friend and started kind of walking forward, two legs and one hand or paw, I'm not sure, while dragging his friend towards him by the neck I just pretty much tore out. He stumbles backwards, and next thing I know, I'm throwing this, I guess at this point, a corpse forward at him, which lands on his legs. He gets up and just takes off running. At this point, the kind of electrical sensation that was shooting up and down my body was kind of, so I had threw this, at this point, I guess, corpse forward at this other fella, and they had got up and just started running. And they weren't really screaming, they were just kind of muttering themselves, but in pure terror. And the kind of adrenaline and alertness that I had, that instinctively, I guess, caused me to just rush forward and to attack as if I was defending my home, I guess. I considered the woods as my home, and they were invaders. The others running off, and then as they kind of get past the little area of like honeysuckle, and there was a couple of briar patches here and there that I had just attacked them in. Next thing I realize what's going on, I hear loud crackling running up from the left of this human running away, and a dash in the air, and there's another one of the creatures that is like me. So I'm like a canine dragon weird fur covered hybrid thing, and but with like tiger stripes, and this other one's like kind of darker colors with some gray. I think like some like mixed in light browns and stuff like that, but the same as me. Jumps out from the left of this human and tackles him, and I'm not entirely sure what happened, but I'm assuming the exact same thing happened to him to what I did to the first human. And for some reason I felt comforted, I guess, probably because, well, they were invaders, and I kind of got the idea that the mechanical city was encroaching further inward and cutting the forest down, destroying nature through a relentless just progress of humanity of destroying everything around it for the sake of just expanding relentlessly, endlessly. I had just left the human that I'm pretty sure I had ripped the throat out of in place, and just kind of wandered back to the stream I was at before, and just found myself kind of cleaning myself off, just not really giving it a second thought. It was as if what I had done was a natural response to an invader, and that's what needed to happen. But as I'm cleaning myself off, I'm also kind of catching more of a glimpse of what I look like. And I have these really big fangs inside kind of elongated canine-like muzzle, but I definitely do have like dragon-like attributes. These long sweeping horns that kind of came out of just behind my forehead, and that kind of swooped backwards, and these really huge ears that did not go up or down. They just kind of swept out backwards. But they were really huge. And I was just kind of catching some details, what I looked like. And kind of the only thing I could really get from it when I was writing this down was it looked like some sort of hybrid between a wolf and a dragon of some sort, covered in fur fully and tiger stripes. And at this point, while in the dream, I'm still kind of aware of who I am in the waking world. And this is if this was like kind of a semi-lucid dream, but not fully. And I'm remembering previous dreams where the same creature had been around me. It's either there was one dream that it was kind of in a picture frame, and there was the couple where the same creature was kind of guiding me forward and bringing me to the old man that has occasionally popped up in my dreams, who is more welcoming and encouraging me to open up to the dream experiences I've been in. And at this point, I had woke up, and that's when I started piecing a lot of this together of what happened. And honestly, for a couple of days, I was thinking about it. I mean, for this simple fact that I killed another person in it, which is, I've never actually had a dream that's happened before. And that's the end of my dream.